Thank you so much for having me. I just want to say before I get into this, God is moving. He's doing something really special here today, and I hope that your hearts are ready to receive this. I always think pastors kind of, well, I'm guilty of this, manipulate, like, ooh, we have a testimony being shared today, and oh, guess what? Kevin's going to preach about sharing your testimony. That's just God. That's just God moving. So I just wanted to recognize that and hope that we are all on the same page, that God is doing something special here in this church, in this community, and that we may be receptive to what he's doing. So I'm going to get going. Life is an interview. This is something I say to kids at Manhattan Christian College all the time. I'm the campus pastor there. And I always say life is an interview. I've been blessed to be able to do a lot of different interviews for camp teams, and we do some travel teams. MCC teams have come out here to Oakley a couple of times, got back at 1:30 in the morning. It's totally great. Love it. But I get to interview a lot of college students to see if they want to do these jobs, right? And sometimes the interview is really short. And because I go, well, obviously you're a good fit for this, so we're going to hire you. And they're like, why do you say that? And I should coin this phrase. And I tell them, life is an interview. I interact with you. I see you. I watch you around your friends at the lunch tables. Like every single day I get to observe you. And so therefore it's easy for me to go, you're hired. I see your life. I see how you conduct yourself. So life is an interview. Well, what's so funny is this actually has become kind of a bigger thing at MCC. And it's actually bitten a student in the butt, which is kind of sad. There was a student who was applying for a job, and I won't throw his name out, but he didn't get it. And when asking why, this phrase got thrown back in his face, well, life is an interview. And he goes, well, what did I do? It was referring to intramurals. Now, anyone who's participated in intramurals know that the heat of the moment gets the best of you. The sport means nothing. There's no trophy at the end of the road. But boy, it's a passionate time where people who are not good at a sport pretend to be good at a sport. So he was told, life is an interview, and I saw the way you interacted with Kevin and how you disrespected him when he was officiating. Like, it wasn't even like something he did to the person interviewing him. It was like, you disrespect Kevin. What do you think you're going to do to me when I tell you what to do? And so he comes to me and he's like, I'm so sorry. Like, we're working through this respect issue. He's a great guy, but it's like, life is an interview, and we talk about this all the time. And then when I was thinking about this, it hit me. Life is not just an interview. When it comes to our faith, life is our testimony. I know you guys are going through an evangelism series, and when Jason told me, could you talk about testimony, I was like, oh, you have no idea how excited I am for this. I think it's so important that we are all familiar and comfortable with sharing your story. Because there's nothing more natural than sharing who you are because of Christ. But yet, we're very timid to do that. So I'm excited to be able to do that here today. And I know that we're going to be getting into this series. But I want you to understand that your story can have probably one of the biggest impacts on those around you and lead them to Christ. So there are three main focuses I'm going to have today. One is the testimony of Jesus, and basically, who do we reflect? We talk about this word in church, testimony, and we're like, okay, whoa, like, what is this? Our testimony is our life in an attempt to reflect Jesus, right? That will be point number one. Point number two, I wanted to relay a story to you, a story of Daniel in the Old Testament, of how this reflection can be had in different cultures. And point number three is, what about our testimony? The good, the bad, the ugly, it's all beautiful. So we're going to get straight into the testimony that we try to reflect, right? We all set goals in life. I guarantee you every single one of you has a goal in your life that you're trying to achieve, whether that's work, family, trying to get in shape, or vacation. My wife is literally trying to make me set a goal to go on a vacation this summer. It might be before Lakeview or after, I'm not sure. But she's like, Kevin, you got to set a goal that you are going to take me on a vacation. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm not a huge vacation person. But we're setting a goal. We all set goals in life that we're trying to build towards. Why are we not trying to set a goal of building our testimony, of sharing our faith? The most important thing that you can do in your life and with your life is to build this story that reflects God and Jesus and his love for you and share it with others. Yet, oh man, I just said that and my heart was like, ooh, that's scary. Yes, it's cold in here. But that thought of sharing God with others just through your life story is scary. Why do we do this? Well, we're trying to reflect Jesus. And honestly, that is a huge idol. When we look to Jesus, that's a big idol that we try to reflect, and sometimes it's a daunting task. And it could be overwhelming sometimes. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, I'm going to read this passage for us, starting verse 31, and we're going to go through verse 1 in chapter 11, says this: So whether you eat or drink, or whatever you do, do it all to the glory of God. Give no offense to Jews or Greeks or to the church of God, just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that they may be saved. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ. Paul is writing to the Corinthians and saying, hey, listen, in everything you do, in every aspect of life, whether you're eating, you're drinking, you're at work, you're with family, you're with friends, whatever it is you are doing, do it for the glory of God in the attempt to save people from their sins. And I love verse 1 of chapter 11. It says, be imitators of me as I am of Christ. And when you dive into this passage, Paul is saying, hey, listen, I'm not perfect. I am just trying to be a reflection, an imitator of Jesus. And then I'm sharing my story with you. In the good, in the bad, the ugly. Paul is just trying to share his reflection testimony of how he's trying to be like Jesus. And so he's encouraging them, hey, come along with me. Get to know your own story. And in everything you do, try your best to be imitators of Christ. But we have to set some goals. I talked about this. What are we trying to do with this imitation of Jesus? Because obviously I'm going to be the first one to admit, and you can admit along with me if you'd like, I will never be Jesus. Jason might be close, but I think his son might have something to say about that. But I don't think I've ever had you here, so this is great. So Paul is saying, okay, so we try to reflect this Christ. My professor, Rusty Thornley, said that when we're going into missionary work, and I wanted to do missionary work, that you have to have a goal. You have to have an objective. You have to have a target. And so we talked about this archery concept. And that when you set a goal, an objective, and a target in missionary work, that you have something that you're shooting for. But too often in the Christian faith and in our walks and in our everyday life, we don't even have a target. We're taking a shot in dense fog. Now, guess what? cool news, you'll hit something. It may not be good, and you might do more harm. You might do something great and say, hey, look, God's so awesome. But oftentimes, I'm going to just give you a reality. Shooting blindly, I'm a big archer fan, and I do a lot of it. I do a lot of hunting, and shooting blind and in the dark, you're going to do more harm than good. You got to set your goals. Our goal is to reflect Christ, is to be like Jesus. Well, how do we do that? You know, we talk about this word every single week. You come into church every single week. You guys are doing a Matthew 28 series. I love that because Jesus calls us to go and make disciples. This is an action step. Well, okay, so your first charge is to actually go into the world, be present, and start to reflect who Jesus is and that love that he has. But yet, that's more difficult. We got to set goals. And the first thing first is we got to try to reflect Christ. The second part, now a lot of you guys are probably thinking, hey Kevin, it's going to be real with you. Like you said, I'm not Jesus. And that's really difficult. And I don't know if you know where I work, Kevin, but it's a rough world out there. Okay. Let's go back a couple 100 years, and let's go into the story of Daniel. I want to share his brief testimony and what that would look like, and then now we can start to be a little bit more bold and say, well, if Daniel can do it, I can do it. And if you don't know the story of Daniel, here's a quick overview of what this looks like to share your testimony in a different culture. One, Daniel was a Jew, a young man who was taken into captivity by Babylon. So his nation was conquered. Babylon comes in and says, hey, we're going to indoctrinate you into our own culture and time. You're going to know our language. You're going to know our customs. You're going to know our food. You're going to know how we eat. You're going to know how we sleep. You're going to know our gods. I mean, oh my gosh. This is intense. Daniel, however, does not succumb to the different time and different cultures. In fact, he becomes an influence to all those around him. And as he keeps going, I want to share this really crazy fun fact with you that I truly have never heard, and it's insane. Daniel was able to keep his testimony and who he was and true to God through 5 different kings and 2 different cultures. 5 different kings came and went. And if you know the ancient history and the cultures back then, each king tried to establish that he was a deity, that he was a god. And Daniel stayed true through them all. And not only did he do that in a different culture of Babylon, who tried to literally submerge him and force him into their ways and into their gods, he did it when the Persians conquered Babylon. And then he was a captive of captive. He was twice removed from Jerusalem, and yet he still stayed true through different cultures. And I'm just going to hit this for you real quick. What's our excuse? To not share our story. Daniel's story is hard. He's stripped away from everything that he knows, everything he loves, yet he stands true and firm in God's love, and he lets God use him and his story for a greater purpose. You think that maybe we could start to cultivate our story, know how God is working through us so that we can share that with others? I'm going to share 3 quick little things about Daniel. Through these 5 different kings and 2 different cultures, he was stayed true to God. The first quick story we're going to share is right away, Daniel is taken captive. Babylon has conquered Jerusalem. And if you know this story, Daniel is forced, and his friends and the young men of Jerusalem, to be in the king's court, to learn their language, their gods, their people, to eat how they eat, to drink how they drink. And this was against God's law. Now, this is my encouragement to you, to stay true to who God has called you to be in your story in the little things. Maybe identify those little things in your story that you can start to change and start to reflect God through the little actions. Daniel and his friends, as you guys may know this story, they end up refusing to eat the meat that they were forbidden to eat by God and his law, and to drink the drinks that they weren't supposed to drink, and they ate their vegetables and fruits. And we all know that story. It's a great kid story. Eat your vegetables. Stay true to God with the small things. Your testimony doesn't have to be mind-blowing. You're just a reflection of the love of God. And we do that through our little actions. And it can have big impacts. As we all know that story, he ends up becoming healthier and stronger and becomes a man of influence. And the next story I wanted to share with you is this is kind of the end of the Babylonian Empire. King Nebuchadnezzar is away. Belshazzar is now the king. And here we have Belshazzar. He's a party animal. He's not a true follower of God. He does not fear God. And in fact, he brings all the things from the temple of Jerusalem into a party and defiles them. And God's like, all right, you're done. And does the whole writing on the wall. Now that's a whole sermon in of itself. Here's what's fun fact about Daniel's life. So Belshazzar does this. There's a handwriting on the wall. He tries to bring all the wise men in and to understand the interpretation of what this means. This is what I love about this story. One of Belshazzar's wives tells him, hey, there's this guy, Daniel, who has a God that is powerful. How does she know that? Through his life, through his testimony, through the way he conducts himself. She knows who he follows. In a time, in a culture where the king himself party all night, he does whatever he wants. The thing to do is to just, drink, have sex, and be married, right? Yet she knows that Daniel's different. Daniel comes, interprets the writing on the wall, says that your kingdom is going to fall, that you are no longer going to be reigning. Here's my thing. First, stay true to God in the little things through your testimony. Second, when you are able to do the little things, then you are going to have the confidence to speak boldly. Now, this is not through him. Certainly not least, we all know and love this story. I'm sharing Daniel's story with you because I want you guys to have about God? Do those around you at your work know that when times get hard, you lean on God? Is that evident through your testimony and your story? The Great Commission calls us to go make disciples. I truly say one of the most powerful things that you have in your utility belt is your story. Your story is a beautiful thing that God desperately wants to use. Yet, I can sense that we're scared. And when we talk about Daniel in the lion's den, we get scared of our lives being criticized. Daniel's life was on the line. Yet when it came to sharing and truly reflecting God through his life, there was no doubt that God was first. When times got hard, he went to him. And they were able to find him praying where they knew he'd be praying. They threw him in a lion's den. As you all know the story, he ends up being saved by the lion, or saved by God. But I share Daniel's story because I want to encourage each and every one of us. We all struggle to share our story in different cultures. If you were put into a different place in a different time, would your story reflect Jesus? We talk about setting our goals. Let's get to the last part here, is testimony and reality. Let's talk about us. How do we share our testimony? How do we build that? I can already tell you the excuses that I've heard throughout my life is, well, Kevin, work is a really hard culture. I'm just trying to fit in first. I'm just trying to mingle and fit in. It just doesn't seem like the right place to share, you know? My testimony isn't ready enough. That one hurts my heart. You know, I think that's the job for the pastor. Your testimony is beautiful, and God wants to use it. But are we setting the goals and preparing ourselves to share? When we talk about archery and looking up and seeing our targets, too often we're like, well, I'll share it. I'll share it when the opportunity comes. But we're looking down, and we're not looking around for the opportunities. Be ready to share your testimony. I'm so encouraged with you sharing your testimony in front of everybody. And it's practice. Share your story in church. Prepare it. Be ready to know when someone says, well, what's different about you? Why are you so joyful in struggles? Boom, testimony. Right there, right in your pocket, right? Be ready to share it. It's your story. It doesn't have to be anything but you. But there are some false teachings out there. I've heard these time and time again, and unfortunately, sometimes come from the church. Your testimony needs to have a little spice of tragedy. I will never forget, I worked for a man who said, my testimony, not mine, his own testimony, is boring. Nothing crazy happens. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's great. God has provided for you. It's given you a mom and dad who didn't leave each other. It's given you a family who supported you. That's not exciting. Didn't have drug problems, didn't have alcohol problems, didn't get in some sort of wreck. God saved me. My story is boring. I'm like, oh my God. This is from the same man that told me his testimony about the spice knife. Told me that, just wait 10 years, Kevin. You'll get it. When you hate your wife. I mean, some of you guys met Kara, so there's no way I can hate her. She's awesome. You know, I'm glad to say, almost 9 years of marriage. I'm almost at that 10-year mark. You told me that I would hate my wife. False teachers will try to tell you that your testimony, your story is not good enough. That it's not your job to share it, it's the pastor's job. That's a lot for one man to do. When each and every one of us has the capability to share who we are in our testimony. These are traps of Satan. So we talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and I'm telling you, I would love to be able to come back and share my own story with you guys and share my testimony with you guys. If Jason wants to do that, we'll work that out. I love you guys so much. This is so much fun to be able to encourage you guys. But I want to share some other people's testimonies and give you guys some tools to work with. You know, we talk about, Kevin, I messed up so much. I cannot share my testimony. One of my good friends, he was a firefighter in Manhattan, and he told me this story of when he just lost it. He got so angry at his friends. I mean, you know, he was a Christian man and he swore. Oh my goodness. No way. And the next day he goes to his team and he apologizes. He says, hey, that's not me. That's not God. My God has called me to be. And I just want to say sorry. I don't know a lot of you guys aren't Christians, but I'm better than I want to be better than that, and I want you to know I'm messing up. He had two guys come up to him and go, that was the most manly thing we've ever seen in our lives. We expect you to come and just shrug it off and not think twice. But you admitting that you are at fault, and you apologizing to us, and then saying that you're called to be better. We want to be called to be better. What does that look like? So he starts to share his testimony and who he is, and his upbringing, and his family. Little windows of opportunity. God can use our mess ups, our hiccups. So don't think for a second that I've place called Eggville, and you know, there's some alcohol had there sometimes. And so I said, I don't want you guys to drive. If you guys need help, give me a call. Wasn't married at the time, so I had my awesome minivan called Black Betty. She was great. And I'll never forget, I got a call from one of my servers, Katie, and she said, hey, Kevin, my friends left me. I'm not plastered, I'm not drunk, I'm just really upset, and I don't feel like I'm in a good state of driving. Can you come pick me up? Absolutely. So I go and pick her up, and she meets me in the parking lot, gets in the van, and she just where do you go to church? My boyfriend and I want to go. End up going to the University Christian Church, and I ended up being able to baptize both of them in their wedding. And just a beautiful, beautiful thing that in Kansas City now. It's one of those things. I did nothing but to say, hey, here's how I found Jesus. So I'm going to give you three little pointers about how to start building your testimony. The first one is, what was life before Christ? Who are you before Christ? 2, the pivot point. If Jesus is not mentioned in the pivot point, then you need to reevaluate that. Okay, this is just testimony building 101. When someone asks me, tell me your story, say, okay, here's who I was before Christ. Here's when Christ intervened. And the third point is, here's who I am after Christ and the joy and love he brings. Through life's hardships, through life's struggles, this is who I am. This is who I'm trying to be, trying to reflect. All the way back to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. In everything that I do, we try to be like Christ, be imitators of Christ. So there's 3 easy steps. Think about who you were before Christ, the pivot point in your life when Christ was introduced, that you started to go after him. And I think about it as like kind of a V. And then now who are you after Christ? Are you setting your goals? And are your goals set on the kingdom of Christ? Because I'm going to tell you something, that everyone lives for their own kingdom, but the kingdom of this earth is going to perish. We all have the key to eternal kingdom in heaven with Christ. The least and the most we can do is share our stories. I want to share one last story with you guys, and then I'll be done. Of a young man who his story is truly amazing, and this actually came to full circle this year. So this man's name is Spencer. He was a kid in my old youth group in Ashland. And just to kind of speed you up on this, when I first was told about Spencer, I was told by many people, don't let him in your youth group. Which to Kevin is a challenge to let him in his youth group. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I invited him over to a couple house activities. Like my wife and I would open up our house for Super Bowl parties, game nights, all this sort of stuff. And so I invited Spencer over, and he was a ball of energy. And I'm like, okay, he's got ADD or something like that. And he just was a spitfire. And I loved Spencer. He was a huge comic nerd, and we related on a lot of different levels. And then I start to get to know him and find out he was bullied from 4th grade to 8th grade because he was short and chubby. And now he basically reacts and keeps people at a distance because of that. Then he worked really hard as his freshman year. He got in shape. He kind of grew out of that short, chubby stage. And then he looked good. He got a sports car, and he was always seeking after something. And I always tried to encourage Spencer. I was like, hey, you know what? Keep coming to youth group. Seek after this God. And I was just a light in his life. I kind of remember he graduated, and he left, and he went off to college, got a degree, and I'm not entirely sure what it was, some sort of engineering. But here's where his story gets crazy, his testimony. I'm in Manhattan, and my phone goes off at 2 a.m. Now, if you're a parent and your phone goes off at 2 a.m., or if you're anyone, you're like, nothing good happens, and the reason why I'm getting called at 2 a.m., I've got to answer this. And it's Spencer, and he's just in tears. He says, Kevin, I think I'm going to kill myself. I hate my job. I think my girlfriend's cheating on me. I have no friends, nowhere to go. And all I saw was your name in my phone. I said, if Kevin doesn't pick up, I'm done. So I look over at Karis, and she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'll be a while. We end up talking, and I end up just telling him, remember those things I was telling you about that would never satisfy, but Jesus would? I was like, this is where you're at. You've been searching and searching your whole life for something to fulfill you. And I'll never forget this, and I want to share this with you guys. I told him this. Your story is a beautiful thing that God can't wait to use. You just got to let him. He accepted Christ that night. He came to Manhattan, stayed with us for a little while. We committed to calling each other for 2 months straight. Every single night. And I'll never forget the roller coaster of excitement that he kind of got, of this joy in his life and just kind of more purpose. And he was like, I still hate work, and I'm pretty sure my girlfriend's still cheating on me, but okay, so we dropped the girlfriend, and that was good. And then we found a different job, and that was good. Fast forward, 2023, January. I get a Facebook message. Hey, Kevin, I just want to share with you, thank you so much for impacting my life in that moment. I'm getting a counseling degree, and I'm doing prison ministry because I want to share the love of God in my testimony with those who think their lives are over, because I thought my life was over. God can't wait to use your story. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Are you using your story to save lives that are lost in eternity? I pray that we are. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for this day. Thank you so much for this opportunity I get to just spend here with this amazing body. I pray that we can share our testimonies, that we can share our stories that you have given us, that we can be confident in your love, that we can set goals, that we can speak boldly your truth. Lord, I'm so grateful for this amazing body of believers that encourage me every time I come out here. I pray that they can take something from this message and apply it into their lives. In your name we pray. Amen.
All to him I free. you very much, Kevin. Appreciate that. I love the before, what happens when Christ changes us, and then what's our life after that. So some great practical stuff. Ladies, spring tea, another good chance for you moms to bring your daughters to that, and grandparents or any others. It's a fun activity that the deaconesses are doing. Great time to invite somebody. Also, I want to talk about youth group. We are starting a whole new series for the guys and for the girls. So we're splitting up. Wendy's going to be taking the girls, and it is that study we've done before, the lies young women believe. So the next 6 weeks is really important to be there. It's going to be a great series to go through. And us guys are going through Wild at Heart. So me and Justin will take the boys, split them in half. Another fantastic series. If you've never been through it, I would really recommend it. But we're doing that for youth group too, and that will basically take us to the end of the year. And then camp.